here we go. It is time for another episode of Cash's Top 5. And today, joining me for the third time, one of our most frequent guests now on the pod, Shy Holder. How you doing, man?
Hey, we are recording this on MLB opening day, so it's a national holiday, and I'm good with that. And we're about to do one of my most favorite things ever, and that's hate.
I was going to say the first one we did solo was a very positive one. It was our favorite baseball movie, so it was very nostalgic. It was very kind of warm and fuzzy. But today's a hate episode, which I know we're both really going to enjoy.
Yeah, sports is a crazy thing because it's like whatever athlete you love the most, you probably don't love them as much as you hate the athlete that you hate the most. Right. Hate is very much stronger than love, and when it comes to sports.
Yeah, so that's our top 5 today. We're going to be ranking our most hated athletes of all time. And I'm curious to hear your list because we are of the same generation, but I know you are a much bigger baseball fan than I am. But we grew up around kind of the same generation of athletes. So I want to see who really and what's really fun about following you on Twitter, just to give your Twitter a shout out, especially back in the day when we used to be more reckless on social media, yeah. Is the reasonings behind why you hate a player would be so funny because he just looks funny or he just did something weird and you're like, I hate that guy. And you're like, you know what? That's hilarious. That's why you would hate somebody, but that you can't help it. That's just how you feel.
It is. Some guys just have a punchable face and that makes me not like them.
Yep, and we're going to talk about that. So let's kick it off, man. Our top 5 most hated athletes of all time. Who do you have at number 5?
For me, number 5 is going to be. This is actually something that developed. Let me preface this by saying, following sports for so long, you sometimes love an athlete and then hate them, or hate them and then love them. For instance, Kobe Bryant, who's not on my list. I hated Kobe for a long time. I grew up a Pacer fan, and he took away a championship from us almost single-handedly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But towards the end of his career, I just developed this huge respect for him. And then at the end, when he started losing skills, I started rooting for him. You know what I mean? To be good. This is the opposite. So this is kind of a cheat. It's 3 guys. Okay. Yachty, Rizzo, and Javi Baez. Right. As a Reds fan, I hate all these guys equally. If I had to pick one, I'd probably hate Javi a little more.
Oh, he's the most fun, though.
I mean, I like him individually in this game, but he got into some really sticky situations with the Reds and the whole Amir Garrett thing. And dude strikes out 1,000 times a season, and then he gets one good hit off Amir, and he's acting like all tough guy. Him and Rizzo have started almost a bunch of fights. There's one time where Rizzo started a fight, and somebody else from the Reds gets kicked out, but Rizzo gets to stay in, and he's the one that started it by talking. And Yachty, who I like, one of the greatest catchers of all time, if you ever notice during his career, he is always the guy that doesn't want to fight until he's being held back.
He's a fake tough guy.
He's the hold me back guy. Yes, he looks tough. He might really be tough. He got the tattoos. He's got all that, but he's never really about that action. He's always, I'm not saying anything. Oh, you're holding me back now? Now I'm talking. That's who he is. And fake tough guys are things that I can't stand. So in baseball, I can't stand those guys. Even though they've moved on, I hate them a little bit less now. But I really hated those dudes when they were playing.
So do we want to call that just the 16 Cubs? You know, I mean, that they can be the representatives of that.
Yeah,
era.
The 16 in Yachty, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I love Schwarber, though. I mean, he played at IU.
Right.
So, I mean, that might be part of it, but I love Schwarbs.
That's really funny. Okay. My 5 for you is a very petty pick, but I have to include it. This is actually kind of similar. This is somebody that I started out loving and then turned into a pure blind hatred. And that is Paul George is my number 5. Great. He got drafted. I was there it was Conseco Fieldhouse at the time. Through work or something, we were able to go to Conseco Fieldhouse. There was a big draft party. Everybody thought we might take Gordon Hayward from Butler.
To be fair, also not to cut you off, it's always Conseco Fieldhouse. We're at the age where it just is what it is. It's Conseco Fieldhouse forever.
And actually at the time it probably was Banker's Life, but I'm still going to call it Conseco. We were there for the draft party. There's nice food and there were tables set up. It was really kind of cool for the Pacers to do that. And I remember when they drafted him, everybody's like, who's Paul George? And then I remember looking up YouTube videos. I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty smooth. He can shoot, pretty good defender. He comes in, he says all the right things. And it's like, it was the first time post Reggie where you really felt like we had a legit star. Danny Granger was cool, whatever. But Paul George looked like he could be the next A-lister. And then he just got really big for his britches. He was on late night talk shows. He was all about PG-13. He's all about PG, he's just about PG-24. And then he hit his exit. And I've heard that, he wanted to stay, but they wouldn't make a trade for AD. And Larry Bird told me he's going to be a power forward and he didn't want to play power forward, even though they don't really have positions anymore. I've heard all the crap, but all I know is, at the end of the day, he left my city. He left my team in a very bad way. And he's been nothing but victim. He's also another fake tough guy. It just, and the personal stuff
Absolutely.
that kind of leaked out makes me think less of him as a man. So I just don't like him.
He's all-time clown for some of the personal stuff. What do they call that? My buddy Donald has a word for him. I can't remember what it is, but basically he's a sucker. You know what I mean?
He's a scumbag.
A simp is what he was called. Yeah. But he's, I think one of the funniest things about him where he's just like, he's a clout chaser for sure too. Cause I remember a couple of seasons ago, he had like an interview on a podcast. Maybe it was All the Smoke. And he was just casually talking. And he was like, yeah, so I remember this one time during my MVP season, I did this, and this. You've never won an MVP, bro. What are you talking about?
The season where you were maybe in the conversation for top 5?
Yeah.
That's your season?
Votes, and he called it an MVP season. So that's what he thinks of himself. He's also a guy that searches his own name on Twitter. He's blocked me on Twitter. I have never tweeted him anything negative about him. I was like, he searched himself and blocked me.
Weak.
And also, this is what bothers me the most. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. And it really sucks. If you believe the advanced analytics, so like Basketball Reference, right? He's got like a 95 or something over 90% Hall of Fame probability right now. And that comes because he's been like second team defense and stuff. He's get these awards and stuff like that. They measure those heavily. But Kawhi Leonard's like a 77% on there. I'm like, how is Kawhi Leonard having less of a chance to win a Hall of Fame? He's got 2 championships. And
the finals MVP.
Yeah, and Paul George is a lock somehow. That's going to be one of the saddest days of my life is if Paul George winning if he goes into the Hall of Fame.
I just don't. I get your point, but I just don't see how you could make that argument. Especially the championship argument. And I know football is a different sport than basketball. Basketball seems like everybody just kind of gets in eventually. But man, having no rings and no MVPs and the fact that he's just a punk, like you talk about his MVP season, he recently said, I got love for Indiana and I know they love me. We hung banners there. It's like, what world are you living in, dude?
He just made up a complete alternate reality of what actually happened.
Are you talking about a Central Division championship? That's the banner you're talking about? Get out of here.
Delusional. It's really, I think that athletes nowadays do prop themselves up in that way because they know that they're trying, instead of just playing, they're trying to build a resume while they're playing. So he's kind of trying to paint his own narrative of like, I'm this accomplished star. And really you're not. The biggest, and the other thing that bothered me is that Paul George blew up when we played the Miami Heat. And he had a really good couple games that series.
Mm-hmm.
So people from the national spotlight think, oh, this is what you are all the time. But that was him at his absolute best. You know what I mean? Yep. So he went into the superstar conversation because of that. And then obviously he had the terrible injury. So that gives people, some empathy for you and whatnot. But like, it's weird about how people can become a national superstar just based off of, okay, the public eye's on me for 5 games in the series. And now they're finally watching me. There's been plenty of times he's disappeared. He hasn't really done much since he left here. That's probably the highlight of his career, to be honest, that Heat series.
Yeah, absolutely. Did nothing in OKC. I mean, They were supposed to be bad and they ended up being good, but they went nowhere. They've done nothing in Los Angeles because of he and Kawhi can't ever play together. They're always hurt. Yeah. All right, man. So we've got your trio, Yachty, Rizzo, and Javi. And now we are at number 4, most hated athletes of all time. Who you got?
That sounds like a really good buddy sitcom, Yachty, Rizzo, and Javi.
Or it's like a mixtape. That's like the new Cash Money.
Number 4 is not just for me, but it's for like a lot of Colts fans across the world, especially my best friend, Brandon Adams. Shout out to him over on Wazy and Lafayette doing the morning show. Hank Basket, man. I mean,
oh man, honorable mention on my list. Didn't make my top 5, but yes.
Yeah. Not only was he married to a baddie, which is cool, he brought Kendra Wilkinson to Indianapolis, so that was cool. I had a chance to hypothetically bump into her somewhere. I did not, but I mean, there was a point in time when you Googled Hank Basket. If you go to Google Images and tap images, Brandon Adams' picture would show up because that's how much he publicly hated Hank Basket. And if you don't know why, you talk about the Super Bowl in New Orleans against the Colts versus Saints, that onside kick, Hank Basket is the one who should have fallen on that and recovered. It's a different game if he does. Peyton Manning has an extra Super Bowl. Yep. Maybe the conversation is different between Manning and Brady. Maybe the conversation is different between taking Andrew Luck and keeping Peyton Manning here. I mean, pivotal moment in Indiana and Indianapolis pro sports history was Hank Basket not doing his one damn job because we knew he wouldn't get in the game to be a receiver.
Yep.
His job was to watch out for that recovery onside kick, and he did not, and he is probably not very welcome here. I mean, Indianapolis is not like Philadelphia where you're going to get, heckled and stuff like that, but he's as close to banished as you can get.
Well, being the Hoosier mentality is be nice to his face, but then talk mad crap about him behind his back.
That is correct.
Deservedly so. Because, you're right. And actually, this isn't on my list, and I didn't have this down, but since she's technically not an athlete, but Nick Harper's wife, we could probably put on our most hated people list.
Good one, yes. That would be another Super Bowl trip for the Colts. It's crazy, these moments in sports history.
Yeah, this is starting to turn into top 5 what ifs. So
yeah,
all right.
That could be. I mean,
that's
I do remember. Though. Part of me, I remember watching that play, but like, just laterally, he's not gonna make it. Big Ben out of all people chases you down. You know what I mean?
I know. Just lying down is able to one hand tackle him. Ugh.
And there was still a chance, but that idiot kicker
got liquored up
and missed a field goal.
All right. My number 4 for you probably would rank higher if we were older. So most of my knowledge of his playing days is from watching documentary after documentary and, NBA TV, watching the Hardwood Classic finals. But just a punk player, a dirty player, Bill Laimbeer from the Detroit Pistons wouldn't make a squad otherwise. I don't respect you when your game is, I just want to hurt your best player. Don't come in the lane because I'm just going to knock you down. Like, that's not basketball, man. Like, I get being tough and having that mentality, but there's a difference between being like the Davis boys, or even like, I hate the New York Knicks, but Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley, like those are just tough dudes that play basketball. Laimbeer is just out there laying haymakers, and he's a punk. And I didn't like that team except for Joe Dumars, and I really hated Bill Laimbeer.
Bill Laimbeer, graduate of my Notre Dame, Fighting Irish. I think fair, but I think some of that's also unfair because that's what we see the highlights played of him all the time. He was a good player. Like I got his stats pulled up now. He had several seasons averaging over 15 and close to 10 rebounds. Like, he was good. Not Hall of Fame good, not Hall of Fame great, but he was. Anytime you see a championship team like that wins multiple, there's always at least a guy on there that you're like, I hate him so much.
Like
Draymond with the Warriors, right?
Yeah.
And it was Rodman with the Bulls, and Bill Laimbeer, and and to some extent Mahorn with the Pistons. But yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, I understand. And oddly enough, he went on to be like this legendary WNBA head coach.
I know that was an interesting. What's the opposite of a heel turn in wrestling when they become the good guy? I actually liked him when he was when he was the coach of the Detroit Shock.
Detroit Shock?
Yeah.
Yes. Then the Tulsa Shock, and now the Dallas Wings. Yeah.
Shout out Cheryl Ford.
Yeah, but he's definitely an interesting character. The Bad Boys.
Yeah. All right, man. Number 3. Who we got?
All right. This one is just based off of looks alone. I'm not a huge IU basketball fan. I was not raised to be an IU basketball fan. If anything, I was a Purdue fan for most of my adolescence. The story behind that is just back in the day, TVs had like 4 channels if you didn't have cable. And one of the channels that happened to get good reception in my room as a kid was Channel 4, and that's where the Purdue games came on. So I just watched Purdue on the weekends. But this guy has torched both IU and Purdue. He's not there anymore. He actually married one of IU's best basketball player of all time, the women's basketball player, Brad Davison from Iowa. The most not from Iowa, from Wisconsin, excuse me.
Yeah.
The most punchable face of all time. Every time I saw this guy on my TV screen, I just want to punch my TV. I don't understand how somebody just didn't just go in there and foul the heck out of him. Like, he's always talking. He's always making a big play after doing nothing the entire game. For some, yes.
There we
very
go.
Punchable face. And
yeah, very punchable.
It's even worse when he has a good haircut now, but he has a buzz cut half the other time. I mean, he's just one of those guys.
Like a little kid.
Yeah, that one. He's just one of those guys. Like, one, how did you get a scholarship? How are you actually this good? And I hate you so much. So I can only imagine how actual, IU fans feel about him. But that's one guy. Every time he's on my TV, I'm just like, I wish bad things upon you. May all the bad things in the world happen to you and no one else but you.
Now, when you first started that I wasn't raised to be an IU fan. I was like, is he going Jared Jeffries? I'm like, who's got a real punchable face from the Hoosiers? Surely.
I would say if you were not an IU fan, you probably hate AJ Moya.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Probably hate Kirk Hayes. And Bill, going back to Bill Laimbeer, he's one of those guys too. Like, if he's on your team, you probably do love him. But if he's not, you hate him. So
the Artest. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a bunch of guys that IU fans just really don't like. Bracy Wright. I mean, it's like you're a Purdue fan, you probably don't like Bracy Wright.
Yeah. Wow, that's
the guys that really bother you are the guys that are, like I said, Brad Davis is like, how are you good? You look like an insurance salesman. So like Kirk Hastings, Tom Cloverdale, Dave Fife, I'm sure they pissed off a lot of people.
Oh man, that's funny. That's such a deep cut too. Like, that's not a big name there, but clearly he really stuck in your craw. My number 3 for you is kind of a representative of an organization, because there's no way I can do a top 5 most hated athletes list and not have a New England Patriot on this list. I thought about Tom Brady.
Scooter Magruder.
I thought about Tom Brady, but nah, I respect the obsession. I will never call him the GOAT because Peyton Manning's the greatest of all time.
It's one of those, like I said with the Kobe thing earlier, it's kind of where a lot of people are on Tom Brady right now. It's like, you can't hate him anymore. It's just.
Yeah, hated him, but then, like, man, you got to really respect it. I thought about Rodney Harrison because I feel like he was a bit of a dirty player, big trash talker, but he could really back it up. I mean, he was a good safety. My pick for 3rd most hated is Willie McGinnis, linebacker for the New England Patriots.
I wholeheartedly see where you're coming from. He's one of those guys that is in the Hall of Fame, and I'm like, why?
Why?
Going into a game as a fan, it might be different as a player. I never said, oh my God, we got to deal with Willie McGinnis today. Like, no one, I never gave him a second thought. You know what I mean? He's just, he should be in the Hall of Good. He's just another guy.
Well, the reason I really hate him and the reason that I picked him is I think it was 2003 that the Colts are playing the Patriots in the playoffs.
So the James play at the goal line?
He goes, it might have been the 4 in a row. It was towards the end of the game, and Patriots are out of timeouts, but Willie McGinnis goes down with a leg injury.
Yeah.
And they stopped the clock, and they were able to get either they were able to score or they were able to get a field goal. I can't remember now exactly. It's been too long. But then 25 seconds later, after the game's over, he's sprinting around because they're going to the championship or they're whatever. I'm like, you leg faking dude, like that is so Bush League. And it's interesting that you say the Hall of Good. You can kind of make that argument for some of them, because there's a lot of, good linebackers, Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel on those Patriots teams. What's funny is I hate Willie McGinnis as a player, but I think he's good on NFL Network. I didn't really mind Teddy Bruschi, but I hate him as an analyst.
He doesn't say anything. He just supports the Patriot way.
That's all he does.
Baghdad Bruschi is what they.
God, come on, man.
Yeah, he's I don't even if it was Willie McGinnis still employed there, because I saw he got into some kind of did he punch a guy out, and him and his entourage in some bar or club, they beat on somebody, and
I must have missed that.
Yeah.
No, but the faking the leg injury, that was one of the things. I'm like, these Patriots are dirty players. It's chalk it up there with the rest of the organization, shady, win at all costs. So yeah, Willie McGinnis, my number 3.
Yeah.
All right, top 2 most hated athletes of all time. Who we got?
My number 2, and this may not be fair, because really it's kind of a triumphant story for someone so small to get to the heights that this guy got to and be good. But as a longtime Colts fan, how could you not hate Jason David? I mean, this guy, barbecue chicken every Sunday, just barbecue chicken. If you want to make a play, throw it Jason David's way. I mean, just every Sunday I'm screaming at my TV because he is so bad. And he's 5'8", and how can he guard anybody? They're just throwing the ball over him. He's lost in coverage, turned around, doesn't know what's going on, and they just kept trotting his little butt out there every weekend and embarrassing us. So that's my guy. He is my most hated Colt of all time. That man, Tim Jennings is a close second, but he actually turned around and proved that he can play when he went to Chicago. But Jason David, I'm still waiting on him to make a play. And that
Jason David is such a funny pick, dude. That's another
stole money from us. Stole money from Indianapolis.
Most hated Colts players of all time. I didn't really think about that. I mean, there's a lot of, irrational love there just because I love the Colts. It probably would be secondary. Carson
Wentz has to be up there.
Carson Wentz, he wasn't around long enough, but definitely hate him. Greg Toller.
That's how he was bad, because he was, he wasn't around that long. Everybody hates him so
much. Jason David. Wow, that's really
Bjorn Werner, who was an absolute bust.
Yeah, I don't want to hate on the busts, but you're right. There are a few that it's like Tony Ugo was supposed to be this great tackle that Bill Polian took, and he was nothing. Yeah. Well, my number 2 for you is there's a lot of hatred, and there's a lot of blame to go around. But again, I'm going to circle it. I'm going to kind of hone in on one player for it, and probably cost my Pacers a championship, our Pacers a championship. And
can I guess this one?
Who you got?
So Tayshaun Prince?
It's not Tayshaun Prince, although I hate his guts. The block on Reggie Miller. He's another one where he's just this skinny little kid, and you're like, why? How are you good at basketball? Why are you on the team? Ben Wallace is my number 2.
Yeah, I guess
most hated.
The lasting impact of what Ben Wallace did lasts a lot longer than what Tayshaun Prince, but they're connected. Yes, he started the whole incident at the Palace.
I harbored a lot of.
That was the year. That was the year.
That was it.
That was the year,
man.
Championship.
I harbored a lot of ill will towards Ron Artest, Meta World Peace, whatever his name is now, for a long time. I knew he was
Facebook World Peace, because
Facebook World Peace, is that his name now? Okay.
Someone else, they took Meta and then.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Well, back then we just knew he was crazy, right? That's all we said was he's kind of off his rocker. And then having learned about his mental health issues and the environment that he grew up in, you're like, okay, well, I've actually developed quite a bit of sympathy for him. And you're right. You go back to it, especially when they released the doc, Jermaine O'Neal finally got to have his say. Steven Jackson got to have his say. Ben Wallace, man, you watch it. If he wouldn't have overreacted, you can blame Carlisle, because why are the starters in there with 30-something seconds left and you're up by 14 points? And Artest shouldn't have done what he did, but Ben Wallace, dude, that ruined the franchise. It killed the championship that we would have won that year. I still maintain we would have won. and then and Reggie Miller got the ultimate fizzle out. He didn't get the firecracker bang, the firework at the end of his career. It just fizzled out, and
super unfortunate. That was
and the other one. I get that he was this incredible rebounder and defender, but Ben Wallace being that quickly named into the Hall of Fame is
he got in before Reggie. Like
joke
Reggie had to wait. Him and Rodman, I believe, got in before Reggie, and Reggie had to wait. It's just kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, I was Ben Wallace, number 2. Could have been number 1, but I really hate my number 1. So, all right, man, we've got Yachty, Rizzo, and Javi, the next Migos. We've got Hank Baskett, Brad Davison from Wisconsin. We've got Jason David. So it's so funny, the most random athletes you have on your most hated, which is so funny. But what do we have at number 1?
Number 1 was such an easy one for me. It's none other than Terry Bollea, aka Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan, man. Yeah.
I hate Hulk Hogan. And let me tell you, there's 2 phases of my hatred for Hulk Hogan. I've always hated Hulk Hogan. I've been a pro wrestling fan my entire life. And even when I was a kid and the Hulkamania was running wild.
So you hated that Hulk?
I hated him.
I'm the yellow and the red.
When someone asks me who's my favorite superhero, it's the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, come on. He was a superhero. And he and Hulk were enemies for a while. And Hulk was enemy with all the cool guys. He was enemies with the Macho Man, right? Ultimate Warrior, bad actor in movies. It just felt so unfair that, like, oh, this 500-pound Yokozuna guy's got a leg drop me. I'm just gonna get up like nothing happened. Like, you're gonna punch me? I didn't feel that. I'm gonna go crazy on you. I'm gonna win every match no matter what. I hated that guy, even though I was supposed to like him. He was supposed to be a champion for people like me, for young kids and stuff. But I hated him. And then comes, whether it's his fault or not, the N-word controversy where he's with Bubba the Love Sponge's wife and he's being recorded without his knowledge. I mean, that word slipped off his tongue like he said it 1,000 times, like butter. Yeah. And there are a bunch of guys that vouch for him, like Tony Atlas being one. Also, although Tony Atlas has like 1 or 2 brain cells, maybe. Black wrestlers that knew him pretty well said that, like, he always took care of us. He was always going out of his way to make sure that we had what we needed. I don't believe he has a racist bone in his body, but it'll make it okay to say that word, whether you're in private or not. Mm-hmm. And it says a lot about the company that you keep, that you feel like, you know what I mean? The company that you keep, that you would say that in front of somebody and not be worried about their response, because you know that they know that's how you are and you know that's how they are. You know what I mean?
Well, and you can take care of, employees or friends or associates or whatever, and still be racist and have a lot of hate in your heart. And
absolutely.
When that first came out, I was like, yeah, he's Hulk Hogan, but remember, he's just a guy named Terry from Georgia. So the odds that he's this enlightened individual is probably not.
He is a Hall of Fame liar. He just lies about everything. Like, he talked, obviously he's known for having like a tan and he's got dark skin. He's like, his whole life he's tried to make it seem like he was part of him was black, like he was Panamanian. My wife's Panamanian American, right? Her mom's from Panama. And come to find out, his mom is technically Panamanian because she was born in Panama, but that's because her family was there working on building the Panama Canal. She is a white woman who was born in Panama. So his thing would be like, my skin is so dark because I am not a full-blooded white man. I'm actually half Panamanian. Technically, his mother was born there, but she's white as just anybody. So Hall of Fame liar. And then the worst part about it is WWE just brings him back like occasionally, like nothing happened. And it's just like, screw you, black fans. We don't care. You got to forgive him. He's going to come out and wave to some people and say happy WrestleMania season and all this other stuff. And there's dudes in the locker room, what I've heard, that like are not happy if they do that and bring him back, and they haven't forgiven it either. But they just trot him out like it's all good, like we forgot about it. And I hate Hulk Hogan. As a matter of fact, let me use your platform here, Cash, to just do this. Hulk Hogan, I challenge you to a match at WrestleMania, okay? Me and you, all right? And if you do not accept this, I am a winner by default, all right? Let me know. Hell in a Cell.
We're going to clip this and send it to him.
Yeah.
That's a great pick. Again, we've talked about this before, and I know it kind of challenged our friendship a little bit that I'm not a huge wrestling guy. I was into it for a little while when I was probably 10 or 11. That was like kind of like the heyday, man. It was like Goldberg and Steve Austin and Sting and The Rock. I mean, that was like the heyday for that generation. And that was when Hulk Hogan did his heel turn. It was the NWO.
To be the best version of Hogan.
And it was
Hollywood Hogan.
Hollywood Hogan. And he brought what
I would call myself Hollywood Holder for a little bit in college.
The one cool part about that was he brought in Rodman and Karl Malone to do some wrestling. And it turns out Karl Malone is a dirtbag.
Yes.
So
who would have thought that Dennis Rodman might be the best human being?
He's trying to go over to North Korea and solve conflict between nations. And Karl Malone's impregnating teenagers, and Hulk Hogan's a racist. I mean, we're not allowed to have heroes, is basically what I learned. Is you shouldn't look up to anybody that you don't know personally.
To be fair, Hulk Hogan his music said, "I'm a real American," and there's nothing much more American than racism. So I guess he was telling the truth all along.
It's deep. It's baked in. There's no escaping it. All right. I had Paul George. I had Bill Laimbeer, Willie McGinnis, and Ben Wallace. Ugh.
Very basketball heavy for you right now.
It is basketball heavy. I grew up more of a basketball fan, and there's not really a lot of hatred I have in football. I'd have to really think through it, which I did.
To be fair, living in Indianapolis, we've had some pretty damn good years. We've been pretty spoiled. Imagine being a Jets fan or something like that.
Well, and a lot of this is what's stuck with us. Like a lot of the hatred that I had has kind of washed away. Like the hatred I had for Phillip Rivers, you talk about a punchable face and just you can't stand him. That kind of went away even before he became a Colt for a year. Darren Sproles, the Colts killer on those Chargers teams.
I never hated Darren because I was a big fan of his when he was at K-State. It's just like I respect you so much for being so good.
You hate him.
How can you be so good and you're 4'0"?
But my number one is another basketball player, and it's because I can't stand the type of game that he has, and it's similar to the Bill Laimbeer style, and that's Grayson Allen is my number one.
Oh, good one.
I cannot stand. You talk about easily top 5 punchable face. He's got Ted Cruz,
Brad Davison on steroids.
Tucker Carlson face. He's a dookie, so clearly there's some holier than thou stank coming from that devil blue.
It has to be pretty bad because he doesn't even like play for a rival of your favorite team. He's just like overall everybody hates him. And
that's the other thing too. A lot of people hate him just because of who he is. I really have fallen out of love with NBA. I honestly cannot remember the last time I watched any NBA ball. Not even a highlight. Even my Pacers. I love the Pacers, but that's not my team, man.
I get the Pacers.
NBA is bad.
I'm the same as you. I get Pacers scores updates on my phone. When I see an NBA score, it says like last night they lost like 149 to 132. I don't want any parts of watching a game where the other team is scoring 150 points. That is insane. That's ridiculous.
Well, and I don't care what analytics say. Like, all you're doing is playing iso ball and chucking threes. It's not fun to watch. And there are arguments to be made that it's better for the players, but I hate that there's a different team every year. NFL's a little different because the careers are shortened, but man, it was Reggie, Rick Smits, Mark Jackson, Antonio Davis, Dale Davis, Jalen Rose for years. And now it's every year there's like, who's on this team? I don't even, it's just, I don't feel connected to it anymore. So that just goes to show how much I hate Grayson Allen. I don't watch basketball much like I used to. I do love college ball, but he hasn't been in college he's been a pro for 6-7 years now. But every time I see him, he's tripping somebody, he's kicking somebody. I mean, it's Bush League.
Is he even good? I'm gonna look up his stats. Is he even good? Like, how is he still? How can he be so hated and still be in the league? My thing is,
he must have some talent.
How has no one fought this guy? Like, he literally put Alex Caruso out for the season last year. I know you don't keep up with it. I don't know if you saw that or not, but he had a dirty foul on the Bulls player Alex Caruso put him out for the season. He was having like a career year and really could have helped the Bulls like make some noise in the playoffs, and he injured him for the season.
That's what I'm talking about. Just a terrible player. Joakim Noah just made me think about
it. Grayson Allen this year is averaging 10.6 points per game, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists.
Is he a buck?
He is a buck.
Yeah.
And he is I can see why he's still in the league. He shoots over 40% from 3. So that'll do it.
Yeah. All right, man. A solid list of hate. I'm getting worked up right now talking about Grayson Allen and these guys. Did you have any honorable mentions before we take any coaches or any other players that didn't quite make your list?
There's so much to hate. I did Kenny Omega. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's another pro wrestler that everyone's just like saying like he has never wrestled in WWE yet in the big brand, but he's in AEW now, and he was in Japan before that and did a lot of like independent stuff. And everybody talks about how great he is and how great his matches are. And every time I turn on the TV, I'm just waiting for this dude to be anywhere as good as anybody ever said. Like I've never. He's just another guy. Doesn't really look cool. Doesn't talk cool. He's just a dude. It's kind of like those people who gatekeep indie rock bands. They're like, oh, they're the best band ever. And they're really Imagine Dragons. You know, it's just he was on the OLI list. He was on the outside looking in for me.
Okay. I had a couple. I had Paul Pierce. Actually, Paul Pierce was on my list until I made room for Paul George because I had forgotten about that, how much I hated him.
I respect Paul Pierce. You know why? He faked an injury so he could go poop.
Which he now denies. He says that's not true. I'm like, I don't believe it. Plus, the whole stabbing thing, like to overcome that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That gives you some sympathy, but that was more of like he just looks like a rat. Like he's got that terrible facial hair.
He's one of those guys who can put on $1,000 suit and still look homeless.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's so good. That's so true. And maybe that's why part of the reasons why I hate him. I always felt like he was overrated, those Celtics teams in the early 2000s. Ken Griffey Jr., I loved as a player because he made baseball so cool. The backwards hat, the iconic swing with the bat. But he is such an a-hole in interviews, and he's so crabby all the time that he didn't quite make my hate list, but like he definitely rubs me the wrong way with how he has no sense of humor.
Yeah, I watched him a couple months ago on the Pivot, and it took him like half the interview to like really open up. And halfway through, they got to him, and it became like a real conversation. But at the beginning, it was almost like, why would you ask that? You know what I mean? Like it was kind of like he wasn't being rude in his words, but it was just like so defensive for some reason.
Yeah, he's always like that.
Yeah, very straight. I do have another one. Drew Brees was almost on my list, which is crazy because I loved him at Purdue.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, when he went to New Orleans and like Colts lost them in the Super Bowl, that whole week leading up to that, I've never seen this happen in another Super Bowl. They had Drew Brees and Peyton Manning on the interview circuit together, just doing interviews all week together. And the energy from Drew Brees was always like, screw this guy. I don't need to be like, he had a chip on his shoulder basically, which I guess is fair. But losing that Super Bowl and kind of the way I feel like he carried himself that week just left a bad taste in my mouth for me. And I think I've ran into him at Purdue a couple of times, and some people said he wasn't so nice. So,
well, that's too bad. Because he seems like a nice guy, honestly.
I mean, not like he was like a jerk, but like really short and like, you know, you'll be one of those people like, hey, Brew, and he'll pretend he doesn't hear you, just like breathe past you. You know what I mean? He's done a lot for school. He's donated a lot of money, but
yeah,
I'm still bitter about that Super Bowl loss. And it's really all Hank Baskett's fault. Matter of fact, Hank Baskett, triple threat match, BU, Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania. Do
it. Last one as we wrap up, Bob Knight. I know he was technically an athlete, but as a coach, I've never understood the love. I've never understood how you can the worship of a man who is just, by all accounts, a curmudgeon, a mean, spiteful, hateful prick. Like I don't get it. Like that whole Dockich world is just unlikable, and I don't.
What is that called? Like this might not be like Munchausen syndrome or something like that. It's one of those things where like someone is so. That's probably not the correct term, but there's some word for this, where someone is so like mean to you that when they're nice to you, you love them so much. because it's like you're just begging for that morsel of like humanity from them. And I think it's one of those things.
Yeah, it's kind of like Stockholm syndrome, where
Stockholm, that's what
you
it
start
is.
to root for the
Yeah,
kidnapper.
Munchausen syndrome is when you like you're not actually sick, but
yeah, you fake
yeah,
symptoms. You
fake.
fake.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, Stockholm syndrome. But yeah, he was actually, and from what I hear, he's fading a little bit. Like he's not maybe as sharp as he was. Like it won't be soon before long for Bob Knight before he's gone. Is what I hear.
Right.
But he was, for whatever you say about him as a human and as a coach, that dude was an outstanding broadcaster. Like when you listen to him do color commentary for a basketball game, you understood why his teams were so successful. He could take the most complicated thing and make it sound so simple, like he could teach it to a preschooler and they could master it. Like he's like one of those minds. Like I finally, when I heard him call games, I was like, oh, I understand now. Like you're really a genius. You're like a savant of basketball.
Oh well, I'll give him props for that. Then he's the opposite of Bill Walton. He's
yeah. Bill Walton, good guy, probably idiot of the microphone.
All right, man. Well, you said you're on bachelor time. You got the house to yourself for a day or two. So I want to say I thank you and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And we'll see what we can do to get that Hell in a Cell match set up.
Let's go.
And,
I'm ready.
We'll talk to you soon, man.
Dad, bod's ready. All right. Thanks for having me.